Lewis Hart for the Ring magazine. Delighted to be joined with Eddie Hearn here in Sydney, Australia, ahead of a big fight on Saturday night. George Kambosos returns to New South Wales, but we're here in Australia. The vibes are brilliant.
I've got the gig. You landed about the same time as me.
Yeah,
we had an absolute stinker.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were following Uncle Jimmy's wedding. Orlando to Dallas, Dallas to Sydney, but then Orlando to Dallas was cancelled. We were at the airport for 9 hours, 4 cancelled flights. Stayed the night in Orlando. Got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to fly to LA. Stayed there for 12 hours, and then had 15 hours here. But I slept the whole way here. I'm buzzing, and we're here. Qudos Bank Arena. Riyadh season as well, of course, with His Excellency, and a big night for Australian boxing on Saturday. Of course, 2 World Championship fights, and now an all-Australian clash with George Kambosos and Jake Wyllie.
Yeah, I was about to get the violin out there with the heartbreaking story there. Yeah, it was hard, mate.
It was, mate. It was.
But yeah, as you say,
especially when Frank posted the picture of me eating my sandwich. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw
it's done 4 million views.
Caused a bit of outrage, that did.
4 million views.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, anyone who's had an airport sandwich knows how dry it is. You've got to put the mayo on. Yeah. But people were saying it was awful. I was putting it on per bite, rather than just spreading it around. It was just per bite.
Yeah.
If you haven't done that, you've never lived.
How was the wedding?
Uncle Jimmy's wedding? Yeah, we didn't make it. No.
Yeah.
It was funny. So basically, we were on standby for this flight, and we had to try and get people off the flight by some kind of bribe. So we went up to the whole gate, and I said, everybody, we got 2 business class tickets. We'll swap for your economy tickets. We'll give you $500 each. And basically no one was interested. So Frank spun off the story about Uncle Jimmy's wedding and how we had to get there. And that didn't work either. So, but we documented it. It was quite amusing.
Yeah, so. It was to my amusement as well. But yeah, this fight week it went without its own issues. Obviously, a main event pulling out. But yeah, Jake Wyllie in. Yeah, good to I guess get in another domestic opponent, which makes it an interesting.
You know what? Actually, funnily enough, when we announced the fight, I said to Team Kambosos, I think Jake Wyllie's a good opponent. Previously, but George, we looked across for international opponents. We went with Jordan, and like anything happens, you get the phone call on Saturday, Jordan's been admitted to hospital, and it's like, and as you saw recently in Australia when Jai Opetaia's opponent pulled out, David Naika jumped in which was a much better fight as well. I think this is a better fight, and I think this is a fight that obviously may be more appealing to the Australian audience because it's a kid from Queensland who bought a ticket to come to the show on Saturday, and he's now fighting. Very heavy-handed, I think 16-1, 15 knockouts, and only a defeat early in his career. And he can fight, and he's up for it. So it's a dangerous fight for Kambosos.
Yeah, I watched George's interview with Fight Hub this morning. He spoke about sort of wanting to give Jake the rocky moment for himself. Yeah, I guess sort of credit to Kambosos for sort of almost coming out there and picking the opponent no matter who it is.
I mean, look, at that moment it's very difficult to get people to Australia. You've got a kid who's 1 hour on flight away in Brisbane. You've got a kid that would run through a wall to get the opportunity to fight Kambosos. Obviously a career high payday, but more than that, he thinks he can win. And there's a lot of people that look at Kambosos and think maybe he's at the end of his career. And he's coming up to 140 for the first time. Jake Wyllie's a fit 140. He was training for a fight in a couple of weeks on a No Limit card. I also want to say thank you to Matt Rose from No Limit, who I had to speak to say, do you mind if he doesn't fight on that card? And he understood the opportunity for Jake Wyllie. And if we're trying to push Australian boxing, it's great to see a young Australian fighter get the chance. And if he wins on Saturday, he's changed his life forever.
What did you ask about it being in Australia as well? Obviously, you've done a couple of shows here now. How do you find it when you talk about the global expansion of Matchroom and going to other areas and other continents, especially ones where they had established promoters like No Limit and other promoters? How do you find it, I guess, going into that and going into that market when there is sort of already an establishment there?
The people here are very welcoming. I mean, there's the same thing in the promotional market here as there is in every promotional market around the world. People don't really get on. Whether it's No Limit and Mick Francis and Tasman, who's our partner, Angelo, who's our partner as well in the past. There's some really good promoters here. I think this is a really important market for us. Why? Because I think the fighters are quality, and I think the fan base is very similar to our fan base in the UK. Have you been to Australia before?
This is my first time.
Okay, well, when you walk around, you'll find it's very similar to the UK. They love their sport, they love a beer, they love a night out. It's not rocket science. How you see them come out for NRL and all those kind of sports. We've seen darts explode here as well. I think there's massive opportunity for boxing in Australia. The difficulty is in the past is it's always been behind a paywall. So every fight of any note is pay-per-view. So how do you build fighters if every time you get to a certain level you jump on pay-per-view? This fight on Saturday is not pay-per-view, it's part of your DAZN subscription, but we've got to try and make sure that broadcasters are investing in shows here on a regular basis. Obviously, DAZN's acquisition of Foxtel recently will put potentially a great position for Australian boxing moving forward, so for us to have more regular shows here. We had Opetaia against Naika in January, it's a huge success with Mick Francis and Tasman. We're here now with DeBella Entertainment with Kambosos in March. Looks like we'll be back in May with Opetaia again, so we're looking to stage about 6 shows a year here in Australia, and I think it's a really important market.
I was about to ask you about, I know not looking past Saturday for Kambosos, but it's pretty clear Hitchins would be the option going through Saturday night. Is there an ideal timeline of when you think you could see that fight? And
June,
where would that be?
Yeah,
New York,
I mean, that would be
Australia?
June in New York.
Okay.
So, you know, as soon as this fight's over, we'll start negotiations with Team Kambosos and we'll try and make the fight. Hitchins is done. He's signed up for it already. George, you know, that's not a problem for George. George made a lot of money. Right, you've seen him headline in Australia in front of 40-50,000. He's fought Haney twice, Lomachenko. He beat Teofimo Lopez at Madison Square Garden. So he's coming back to America as the challenger in that fight, but still as a big name challenger. So hopefully we can reach a deal, but he's got to get past Jake Wyllie. Listen, if Jake Wyllie wins on Saturday, he could be fighting Richardson Hitchins for the world title. So, you know, first things first, you've got to focus on what's in front of you, and it's going to be a tough fight.
Yeah, just touch on the undercard as well. Sky Nicholson in.
Great fight.
Arguably a toughest test against Lara Brown. She's very up for it.
I think it's 2 of the best featherweights in the world. I think it's a magnificent fight. I mean, the 2 female fights on the undercard for the World Championship are 2 brilliant fights. Yeah. You know, Sky's 12-0, Tiara Brown's 18-0. Sky's a former Commonwealth Games gold medalist, Olympian. Tiara Brown's former world amateur champion. This is one of the top fights in the division. And then Shanika Johnson against Nina Hughes, the rematch, you know, of a brilliant fight last time on Kambosos' undercard. So you got Tera Moana, look out for Iman Katiev, who I think is the future of the light heavyweight division. He's an animal.
Serious fight.
You know, Hemioto as well, big heavyweight on the card, and you know, it's going to be a great night of boxing. But the 2 women's fights, fantastic fights.
Yeah. Moving on, a big video came out yesterday. Chris Eubank Jr. Offering yourself, he was offering yourself a bet of £1 million, sort of taking it away from the one that you offered Ben Shalom. Yeah, guess what was your thoughts when you did see the video?
Yeah, very clever. I think it's easy to trick the public. I mean, just to kind of make sure the public are aware that following our little laugh and a joke with Ben Shalom about the £1 million, Ben Shalom stated that, I mean, it's a good way to get out of the bet, but it was true that promoters can't bet.
Okay.
So much so that the British Boxing Board of Control recently actually sent an email, which I'll show you now. So I'll read it out because I just want to put Eubank to bed because he's one for the views, do you know what I mean? So it says, where is it? Because I wanted to pull this up for your interview, true Frank Warren style. This is from the British Boxing Board of Control regarding Regulation 30A. A member, i.e. a licence holder, shall not directly or indirectly bet or permit, direct, allow or enable any person for the member's benefit or gain to bet on the result, progress, conduct of any other outcome of the connection therewith of a contest in which the member is participating or proposing to participate in any capacity of which the member has any influence, direct or indirect. And that is the reason that Chris Eubank done a video yesterday to try and get some views and some noise, because he knows I can't bet on the fight, and he knows that if I did, I would receive a fine like him of 100,000. And I, you know, so maybe we could do something for charity. Do you know what I mean? But it was good. He did what he's all about: views and clout. He's clout chasing, and yeah, I would love to have the bet with him. But I'd also get better odds. I think Connor's 6-5. I
haven't checked the odds.
So I wouldn't take even money from him. And there's another reason I wouldn't take a bet with Chris Eubank Jr. I won't go into it right now. But yeah.
Was it anything to do with Conor Ben's comment? I see him said he's got enough bets to settle.
I'm not going into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it? You must enjoy playing the game a little bit though with Chris, because I saw you.
He's brilliant.
You reposted that photo that he posted of you with the eggs.
It's great. I mean, look, like, you know, I'm joking about him being a clout chaser and views. That's what it's all about. You know, you saw Simon Jordan yesterday. Oh, I mean, Simon Jordan would love me to get fined by the British Boxing Board of Control. Can you imagine? I'm going to give him wet dreams for the whole of the year. So, you know, it's the whole thing, the build-up. I mean, I thought the Piers Morgan stuff was fantastic. I mean, this is a massive Ring Magazine event. Yeah. So, looking forward to it, and we win the fight. Connor's training like an animal, and he will knock Eubank out at Tottenham. And we can have can't have a bet, but we can have a little friendly charity situation, maybe like a forfeit. Okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like if Conor loses, I have to, I don't know, run the New York Marathon.
Okay.
And if Conor wins, Shalom's got to do 3 2s with me.
How do you think that goes?
We'll see.
Is there much like DM conversation? Like surely when with you and Chris, like when you said that.
I'll never speak to him.
Okay.
But I think he's funny. Listen, I want fighters. We're about to do face-offs here.
Yeah.
I would love it if someone, created a scene here. Not with a slapping an egg over someone's head, but that's what Chris does. He understands the game. He's a good self-promoter when he can be bothered. And right now he can be bothered because it's a huge fight, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah. Last couple from myself. I did want to get some clarification. Obviously, I know there's been speak of an Anthony Joshua injury. Is there any clarification that you could say on what the injury is and like the timeline of the return? For
The
AJ?
top half of his body.
Okay.
There you go, give you that. And it's nothing major, but it means that he's been returning to training and he's not quite ready to turn back to camp.
Yeah.
He needs about another 8 weeks till he can punch properly.
Okay.
That's it. So, you're looking at, April, May till he can start camp properly. So, leads us to the back end of the summer. So, that's it.
I know I didn't get to ask you last week, I didn't speak to you last week, but did want to touch on the failed UKAD test with Mauricio Lara. A few questions that I took out from just looking at the report. Is there a concern when the adverse finding gets found in October for him then to be provisionally suspended in March? Like, what is the need? Why is it such a long?
Longer than that.
Yeah.
I think it was nearly 2 years.
And there was he boxed on a show,
Mexico,
one of your shows.
Yeah. And I think the thing is the main thing is when a report comes in of a failed test, in my opinion, it should go to the following parties: the British Boxing Board of Control, the promoter of the show, the team of Mauricio Lara, and the team of the opponent. In this case, it was Leewood. Right? Now, from there, I'm sure it'll leak out and it'll get out. And what we've started doing, following the Conor Benn incident, which we learned a lot from, every time we received a failed test now from VADA, we will automatically issue a statement to say this person has failed a test. Now, the UKAD rules is strictly confidential, so they will contact the fighter, right, and deal with it with them. Not the promoter, not the other opponent. And I do feel like for transparency, that's why I think the problem is with VADA, they don't deal with the incident. Yeah. They just report. It's not their fault, that's just what they do. UKAD deal with the incident, and they would argue, yes, but there is a process. You have to give a fighter an opportunity to hear his case. If it's out in the media, the public, they will make their decisions, they will influence the panel, whatever. But I don't know why it has to take so long. That's a bigger concern. Because you've got someone out there that has failed a test who is still competing without actually getting to the final stages, and that's, I understand it's not an easy spot for UKAD, but they do take very long.
Yeah. Didn't know if you saw Teofimo Lopez's tweet yesterday. Was taking a clip from an interview with Eddie Hearn, calling out Shakur Stevenson. He said that's how he's feeling. So I guess that was taken as a call out from Teo to Shakur.
Let's do it.
Bit of back and forth. Fight.
Listen, Shakur will fight anybody. Shakur believes in his mind he beats everybody. And at 135, I have no doubt. At 140, it's a step up. But listen, it would be him trying to become a 4-division world champion. Shakur just wants big fights, big opportunities. So we're ready for it.
Yeah. You spoke in an interview with IFL about Bam Rodriguez return and spoke about being a unification. Ideally, obviously, if Puma and Ioka are tied up in a rematch, that ideally be Cafu would be the unification.
We are talking to their team. We've spoken to His Excellency as well, because he wants to see Jesse Rodriguez on Ring Magazine or Riyadh season cards. He's a top 5 pound for pound star. So we'll see. But for me, next for Bam Rodriguez, it will definitely be a unification.
Last one from myself, and obviously being in Australia, I do have to ask. You mentioned about the return of Opetaia. Ideally, as you say, May and any potential. Yeah,
there has been some conversations in the last few days about the Zerdo fight with Golden Boy and with His Excellency. Okay. For me, I want to see him unify the division, but we've got to stay active. He boxed in January. We're speaking to Mick Francis and Spencer Brown about a potential fight here in Australia in May for Opetaia, and a big card back on the Gold Coast, Brisbane way. So if we don't unify, that'll be next, but we'll decide this week.
Yeah, brilliant. Eddie, appreciate the time, and good to see you over in Australia.
Good night, mate.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.